Hi there, welcome to the speedrun session that will go through the Wyckoff analysis for these 24 altcoins in the category of L1, L2, and L0. If you're new to my sessions, here are the 3 key items I'll quickly go through in these speedrun sessions. I'm not a financial advisor, and these sessions are solely for discussion with the asset tech community, including yourself, plus for education purpose only. If you haven't subscribed yet, remember to click the button. Now let's get into the very first chart of the very first coin. Different from, so the screen you have seen just now that I'm showing these 24 coins. I'm not going through in alphabetical order like what's listed over there. I've grouped the coins into according to their stages, including distribution cycle, early accumulation, and mid-late accumulation. So we'll start with the distribution cycle first. So for this, we have Bitcoin Cash as the very first one. Interestingly, it basically deviated from what Bitcoin is doing this week. So it climbed above, it basically pumped to a high level, challenging the 615 green key level. So previously I shared that there's 20% chance that it still can come up for a second test or an upthrust after distribution. And this week kind of tried to do it, but when we get to the daily chart, we'll quickly see what kind of indications the price actions are telling us. When it comes up to challenge the higher level, currently it's finding a little bit of resistance. We see this wick pushing the price back down when it challenged the green key level. Before it can come up to challenge the 700 light blue key level, there is this red line over here. So you see this upthrust we are referring to, right? So if I zoom out, you see this is a declining peak trend line. So if it comes up to really past the 615, what we hope to see is that the price or the candlestick goes through this red line, breaks it, even if it's a wick like this, a thin line like this, I'll take it as this trend can be taken away. This is a declining return trend line. So if you invest into altcoins, it's not difficult to see in quite a number of them that they've got lower and lower peaks. So that's why I'm putting in these lines, just to track if the price really gets to a new distribution high. Are they going to break those trends? Okay? So what to expect next, if it really comes up to challenge this, if it happens, that somebody would be happy, but be careful that it's going to come down eventually for a sign of weakness. Alright, these are further down the line. So previously I also shared an idea whether it was actually reaccumulating at this stage, getting ready for the next pump, and that's still a possibility. Okay, when we get to the daily chart, we see this today. Okay, however, while the candlestick is long, the volume isn't that convincing. So yesterday the volume was higher than today's. Today there is still about 5.5 hours left. It looks to me that it's probably like kind of a last try before it comes back down. So it has been going through this sideways trend since mid-late June. Alright, and it's still continuing within this light blue box. Previously, I also shared this trend line about the uptrend, but on last Sunday, it broke the trend line and come back down. So be really careful. This may be a fake bull. Alright, the volume basically isn't supporting. The previous few days was basically, even though it's white, it's basically the bulls and the bears were basically getting or battling. I'm trying to pull up this. Okay, yeah. You see these wicks from both the top and the tail, right? The head and tail. Basically, the bulls and bears are pushing it around. So it's not a definitive, going up signal. Today, even though we don't see quite a long wick from the top, the volume itself, compared to the candlesticks, especially the past few days, doesn't look like there's strong enough support. Alright, look at what happened over here on the 3rd. It's continuous trial, but be careful that it's probably going to get rejected from the ceiling again, and this 615 line, if it is today's candlesticks like look and feel without the long wicks, but the November 21st volume, I would say that's more positive. Currently, it's not there yet, but who knows what, like 5.5 hours later, the volume may pump up. It's only at the time we're seeing this. If it really breaks above these two resistance lines, the green and the blue, the dual resistance over here, that's when it's got the chance to actually go challenge the light blue key level of 720. Like I said in the very beginning, there's 20% chance, but the likelihood of it getting rejected coming down is still higher than that 20%. Okay, that's Bitcoin Cash. So I'm going to speed up from this point onwards because this is supposed to be a speed run session. I usually explain a little bit more when I cover the very first one. Next, Binance Coin. I'm not going to repeat. Basically, it's still in the distribution cycle. It just shows sign of weakness. I already said there may be an LPSY, which it did. So this peak, coming down, it has confirmed that last point of supply. So next, probably another sign of weakness. All right, that's where the March this year, that's quite long ago, like 9-10 months ago, we were at those levels. So the likelihood of getting back to that level is getting higher and higher. Daily, again, it's traveling through a horizontal trend, clearer, much clearer than the other ones. So I've been adjusting a few charts from the Cardano to a couple, maybe XCN even. So they're exhibiting very similar behavior. And previously, I was considering a more steep declining trend. But after looking through a few more altcoin charts, even though they are going through a downtrend, they look a bit more gradual. So I'm still monitoring whether they're going through the same downtrend, or is this horizontal or sideways trend going to persist? All right, so it may be a trend change brewing. So to confirm the trend change, we're supposed to be at that point. It's pointing towards the 22nd of December. The blue line crosses the purple key level of 845. This is pointing to 3 days later. So supposedly, if it was still trading at this corner, we should get a confirmation. But unfortunately, it got rejected just 2 days ago. And yesterday, it went below the purple key level. Today, it's trying to climb back. So let's see whether it took the final few days to break outside of this downtrend. All right, and really confirms that this sideways trend is going to persist. And if it doesn't, obviously we've got this line acting as support, referring the wicks over here, as well as if we extend towards the left, there were a couple of candlesticks over here. So this is an intermediate level at around 790 roughly, before it comes down to challenge the 740 key level. Alright, like I said, if it really is coming down for a sign of weakness from the big picture perspective, 740 is only the first stop, that where the upthrust landed. Then we have the 675 and eventually all the way down to the orange and the red key levels around the 500s. So this downtrend probably isn't over yet. Even if it's going to go sideways, it may end up, starting a new downtrend. All right. Just one last thing. There's a even bigger trend box or air hockey table. Look at this. That started back in 2023, end of the year. It still hasn't dropped outside of this uptrend yet. So it has to go challenge the 675 level to actually end this mega uptrend. Alright? That's the case for Binance Coin. It's different for every single one. Bitcoin has fallen outside of that trend already, but Binance Coin still is over there. I mentioned a lot of times, especially the exchange tied coins, they somehow behave a little bit different. Next is Decreed, DCR. So the big picture perspective, again, is still somewhere between the distribution and the accumulation. So it's still seeking a low point. So last week I said, it may be showing just the automatic reaction. However, if it goes further down, it's like a fairy, or it's like a flash distribution, re-entering the atmosphere and landing to the earth straight from this point. Whether you consider it landed to the moon, or it has just orbited around the earth, it's just a quick return from that point without even a rebound. That's totally possible. Okay, so it's somewhere around this preliminary support or this automatic reaction point. All right, if it really gets a rebound, then I will consider that an AR, and then we have a last point of supply before it officially re-enters accumulation. So looking at the daily chart, this downtrend is still continuing, just finding support for yesterday and today along the yellow key level of $15, mid $15. All right, if I zoom out, you'll see I'll adjust these, it's 15.66. I'll further clean up these charts, so I'll use other lines and you'll always see those figures. Just that these BC charts, it will be a bit messy by then. It's going to be packed with numbers. So this downtrend, if it continues to trade sideways, okay, like what it did during the summertime, just that it may come lower. All right, I said it hasn't re-entered accumulation, so it's not a surprise if it comes down to challenge the orange key level around $13.90 or $12.30, or even the bottom of the long-term playground zone. All right, this white line over here at around $11. So this, if we extend the air hockey table, the top edge of the table points to these dates. First one around January 8th or 9th, the second, the 15th, exactly mid of Jan, then another week later. So depending on where the price heads to, by looking at the volume, it's got to a very low level. So I presume it's going to take a pause and maybe rebound before it seek lower. So what could happen is that it starts to trade sideways and then all the way to here and get rejected from the ceiling and start to decline again. Now that's the scenario that I see it may play out. Not necessarily coming back so low. I mean, it's going to come down, but it can come down along the top edge, along the ceiling, and find one of those occasions and then eventually break outside. So it can often even go higher for the LPSY before it comes down. Again, that's the light blue key level at around $19.40. So this is the area that the price actions would likely travel along in the next week or so, until we get into January. Alright, that's decreed. Next, Ethereum. Ethereum, still accumulation. This one is confirmed, the sign of weakness. It's basically at the 2,800 level. The dual support that I mentioned a couple of weeks back, that we may see a stronger rebound, and indeed it happened. Okay, this is confirmed as well. So the rebound went all the way to mid 3,000. Okay, 3,400. 55.5 was the highest. Alright, so that's what I shared before. This dual support, the green line and the white line. The bigger rebound, and then now it has come back down to challenge the green key level of $2,800. Again, if Ethereum is finishing the distribution cycle, the next stage is going to come is the preliminary support, the very first stage of an accumulation. Alright, let's remove this. If it really is going to come down, like what it did back in March, okay, this year, I'm not talking about way back in history, then it will seek a low point somewhere maybe even lower than the red key level of 1950. However, that's not the only reference we can take. In 2024 summer, not the beginning of the year, because it just started to climb, that quick accumulation, it was at a level higher than the orange key level of 2,200. Alright, we are, or this week's low point is only about $600 away from that. So that can totally happen at a higher level. So even if we think it's going to come down, it can come down to just at this level, meaning another about 25% adjustment, and then it can start accumulating over there, based on what happened in the last quarter of 2024. So two different levels, same kind of behavior, accumulation. Daily chart. Volume, not particularly good or bad, not too high, not too low. Just that this U-turn over here, you see this inverted cross or like a pin, red, a pin, and this up is like a U shape, right? A U-turn. You see this? It's probably going to come back to challenge the 3,200 level again. Okay, even though it's got a little bit of resistance from this white dashed line at around 3,000. So this coming back to challenge here, and then eventually come down or even further, as long as it doesn't break outside of this downward channel, because it still is within this channel. Breakout time points. Here, the dual support, 2,800, and the white line, the ceiling of the long-term playground zone, that's pointing exactly to January 10th. Alright, that's the first opportunity. The next is pointing towards somewhere the 24th, near 24th of Jan. Those two are the nearer time point. Further down, our future sessions will cover. That's going to get into at least mid-February for the 2,200 orange key level. So that's Ethereum. Hedera. Again, similar. It has come down for potentially a sign of weakness, but I did explain that this is not a must to happen. Okay, after the last point of support, or last point of supply, sorry, you can consider this over here, not the box, here. Alright, the thing I mentioned or explained before is that sometimes when the price drops from the last point of supply, it doesn't rebound necessarily. See, there was a sign of weakness back in here in 2021 August, but when the price came down to challenge this level again, back in April 2022, there was no rebound, and it went straight into accumulation. That's what I was trying to explain. Currently, that little pause over there, we can award that with these two tags, but it's not very meaningful, alright? Just that it's likely has already re-entered the accumulation, so I can remove these percentages. In future, because these are speedrun sessions, I'm not going to put in those percentages. Just so you know, when you have read enough these charts or seen enough my sessions, you know the next stages are likely those stages. So if this is where it is, like what it did in 2022, so the next would be the selling climax. If we look at the daily chart, the volume is actually a pretty low level. No, since end of November, especially when we get into December. However, it's not over yet. Obviously, the test of paper hands and diamond hands will continue, and like I said earlier, when it comes down, it doesn't necessarily have to go as low as what it did back in 2-3 years ago. When I mentioned about Ethereum, I talked about the same thing. It can start accumulating earlier. So if for this cycle, the selling climax is to end at around those blue key levels, alright, which can be possible because October 10th went just to somewhere around this center line, this white dashed line, and the light blue key level of 0.087 is close enough. So that's maybe where the panic over point is. Okay? So if it travels all the way to here, it may eventually started to confirm that it may trade sideways from that point onwards. Alright? That's what we are waiting to see, to find out whether that's the case. I'm extending this box so we can see the indicative date, assuming it's going through this lesser or less steep downtrend from this point since late July. Alright, this, assuming it's traveling through along one of these key levels, okay? Right over here. The 3 time points, the very first one points to April. Yes, that's very late. If you're a little bit more optimistic, it may travel to this point that points to the end of March, and then late April, and eventually early May. That's assuming no particularly good news come out that pushes the entire altcoin market to another distribution. It will eventually trade sideways until all the paper hands are gone, and then it will confirm the sideways trend that's going to continue until the point it's ready for the next pump. Alright, for Hedera, this cycle from mid 2000 or actually early 2022 all the way into the end of 2024 was way longer than a lot of other altcoins. Okay, so if you consider this and other mini distribution during the first half of 2024, that's totally fine. Just that when I look at this, I rather just make it simple with 2 distribution and not categorizing this as like a teeny tiny distribution. Solana, again, similar but a little bit clearer. There was a small pouch, so we'll give this keep this tag here, this Medal of Honors for achieving the sign of weakness and the last point of supply. Again, it's probably going to come down to the orange key level of $100 to show another sign of weakness. Whether there's going to be a rebound, or like I described earlier, is it going to go straight down after the LPSY that we have just confirmed, straight into accumulation. Time will tell, but we know the likelihood of this coming south is getting higher and higher. I'm not going to repeat the possibility of it accumulating at a higher level because, looking at this chart compared to Hedera, Solana has basically got into the distribution cycle like an year earlier than Hedera. Daily chart. Again, it has broken a key level. We were supposedly moving towards the January 7th, the big breakout potential date, but now it's kind of confirmed that the 125 becomes the resistance. Okay, you see these long wicks from the top, right? It's clearly getting rejection when the price tries to go back up. So expect more downward action to come until the point it actually confirms that it has broken outside of the downtrend. All right. Next is Tron. So there are two more that, including Tron, 3 in total, that are still within distribution cycle, and then we'll get to the accumulation cycle projects. Here, again, very high level LPSY, still chance to come up for another test, but the likelihood is going back to this red key level of 0.199, okay, about 20 cents. The volume, not particularly good or bad, which means the likelihood of coming up here may be lower, because otherwise the white volume should be higher. Daily, this downtrend is still going on. No surprise as of this moment. Potential breakout dates. It has been finding support along this red line, about 27 cents 30. This is by year end. Okay. Next, the purple key level, 26 cents, is by 10th of Jan, and eventually another week later. Assuming it continues to travel along this ceiling of the air hockey table, those are the dates with a potential that it confirms there is a change of trend. Okay, if it starts to trade sideways or even upwards, but it's still within the distribution cycle. So like I said from the very beginning, even if it trades sideways or even come up to show a second test, eventually it's going to come lower to show a sign of weakness. Okay, currently the first stage, if it really comes up, this 0.273 red key level is the support, the key, very key support. Next is the orange 0.209. That's where the sign of weakness back in mid-March landed. All right, so that's Tron, and we have XMR. XMR, again, similar situation. It's still going through this upward stage with like the late FOMO or fixed bull kind of scenario. Looking at these bars, the volume isn't as high as what we see previously. So be really careful. If this is really weakening, then eventually, again, it will come down for another sign of weakness, and that's somewhere around 260 level for the case of XMR. This will be at a later point because it was supposed to be something for last week, but this week went further higher. Okay, just that the long wick from the top kind of indicates that what happened during the week of November 24th is playing a resistance role. So when we get to the daily chart, we'll see what's going on. So the purple key level of 417 kind of provided support for Wednesday 17th. But yesterday, you see the clear rejection back to below this purple key level 417. Just that there is another line over here. Okay, this was where November 30th landed, or ended at. Currently, the price tried to climb up but isn't successful, and you see the volume is actually rather low. Okay, if it was something like the November 9th, then this would have gone up to challenge the ceiling of the uptrend. Okay, it doesn't seem to me there's sufficient strength as of this moment. Let's keep this line over here and see whether it's going to get rejected and started to come back to this point, because there are a couple of reference points over here. Let me adjust this a little. Assuming this is the rate of ascent, the rate of climb. Let's assume that this is it. So these dates, let me extend this line as well. These dates we are looking at, assuming the price continues to trade along these lines. We've got this blue key level 388, purple key level 417, and this blue dash level of 434. This one points to 21st of Jan. This one points to 11th. This one points to right after Boxing Day. The third one over here is less likely. So what do I mean by that? It means if the price got rejected very heavily back below the blue key level 388, that's where the time point to confirm it's going to drop outside of this uptrend by the Boxing Day, or just one day later than Boxing Day. Second scenario, which would be quite likely, is pointing towards somewhere near Jan 10th or January 9th. That's another trend change confirmation point. The third one is assuming the price stays above the purple key level of 417. That's pointing towards the 21st of January. So next week when we come back, we'll see where the price is, and it's probably getting very close to a trend confirmation point. If there are really some good forces coming in, pushing the price back up, that's understandable. We're getting into 2026. It's a new taxation year for some countries, and the capitals are moving heavily right now because of, I don't know, the carry trade, or Japanese interest rate or not, or other reasons. Okay, this reaching the upwards of the distribution is still a possible case. All right, looking to the left here, there's one we can take reference back in 2021 that the highest point was over $500. This upwards of the distribution, would it happen at the same level, okay, before the price returns to the earth? Let's wait and see. Next, Zcash. Zcash, again, early distribution stage, just did the automatic reaction. Like I said before, we may see an LPSY. It's still not over yet, okay? I did mention there's still a chance of a second test, because since the very first session I covered Zcash, I already showed you this distribution back in 2017-18. It came up, showed automatic reaction, one LPSY, another LPSY, the third one. So free rebound before it fully returns to accumulation. This time, similarly, we've got this automatic rally already. This LPSY over here, if we look to the left, is not as high as the one over here yet. Alright, so that's why I say there's still a chance for it to bounce a little bit higher. Just that the wick is pretty high, very close to that level. But you see this long wick from the bottom this week as well. The volume is like just half of last week, so be careful that the momentum is dying down. If we look at the daily chart, we clearly see today's spread, this long white candle, isn't supported by a high volume. So that's a signal, okay? While it's still traveling along the uptrend, it may bounce a few times and then eventually confirming that it's going to drop out. That's a possibility besides like going further up. What are the levels that we have to take reference? Clearly, there's one right over here. Look at this drop at this point, okay, somewhere in mid-November, and then this and this basically, okay, these as well. So we are currently trying to break this level. So this level is around $450, 448 or 450. It's a range, so it's not just a single price point. If the price doesn't break this level, this triangle, the tip of the triangle, is pointing towards the 5th of Jan. So by that time, it has to confirm whether the uptrend is going to continue or is it going to turn into a horizontal or sideways trend or even a downtrend from that point. So it's only about 2 weeks from now that will be confirmed. So these are the coins going through still the accumulation cycle. Distribution cycle. Next, we're going into the accumulation cycle, and I'm splitting these into two halves as well. And very quickly, Atom. These, and for Atom and the following coins, are going through the early accumulation stage, meaning it's still probably seeking the selling climax or just showed the selling climax. Looking at what's happening at Atom, and the volume has been continuously declining without dropping in volume. So this trend may still continue further. All right, after the sign of after this selling climax is over, then we can expect an automatic rally. And then if we look at the daily chart, you see the downtrend that this air hockey table that I've drawn, right? This is still being suppressed by the center line of the downtrend. Let me adjust this line a little bit. It's not aligning. Not that it has to cut the box exactly in half, but it has to align to most frequent candle heads and tails, most condensed area. So here, it's trying to stay above this white line at around $1.90. That's the long-term playground zone ceiling. Is it? No, it's the bottom actually. So I shared before this bottom back in 2020. Now it's coming down to challenge it, but that wasn't the lowest point back in 2020. There were two more reference lines that's showing us a level at around $1.50 and the other at $1.10. Okay, Atom can go as low as those points, and if it does, the trend change confirmation may come at near end of February or even further down to mid-March. Alright, this is still trading at the weaker side of the channel. So if it moves towards the stronger side, those two will realize. Otherwise, it's just going to seek to a very low point or an all-time low. Some altcoins did that, and it won't be a surprise if Atom does the same. Not that it's not saying it has to, but there's a chance. Now, Chronos, similar to Atom, still going through the stage trying to confirm the selling climax. This week, it pumped a little, but then quickly got rejected back to the current level. Volume, a little bit lower than 5 weeks ago. Let's see whether that's going to continue. You know what to expect next in the accumulation. And in the daily chart, let's adjust if we can. But here, it looks to me that it is indeed outside of the downtrend. Alright, this for C8 Chronos has way more reference points than the earlier ones that I've showed you. So this, I'm not going to adjust it. And it's definitely trading a lot more sideways than before. The other ones were trading along this edge. That's why I was adjusting those. But now, looking at this, even though it came down, it got a key rejection on Monday. Currently, it seems to get better support. Alright. This chart over here, I don't see the volume. Okay, it's probably gone somewhere else. It's been declining. So yesterday they were still selling over there, but the volume isn't that crazy. However, this was pretty indicative. It was high volume plus a strong rejection. So be mindful, even if it bounces up to challenge the yellow key level of 11 cents, it may get another rejection. Alright? But this coming down to challenge the 8 cents orange key level. Looking at what's going on over here, that's still a possibility, because the selling climax, even if this is really the selling climax where we are at, it doesn't mean it's the lowest point of the accumulation cycle. So the subsequent test can go to the orange or even the red key level during the paper hands diamond hands test. EGLD. So this one, again, somewhere around the selling climax, pending confirmation, next automatic rally, daily time frame. Still a long downtrend on the weaker side. Breakout timing, mid-Feb and early May. So pretty far down the timeline. And looking at the volume, this one over here was pretty positive on the 5th of December. However, subsequently, kind of negated what happened over there. So maybe somebody found it an attractive price to get in at that point, and that's why the volume was huge over there. However, there's also a hidden thing here. Somebody was technically or skillfully buying and selling. So while somebody was buying the dip, started from this day, someone was actively selling as well. So that's why within this, the volume was crazily high compared to the rest. So there was probably quite a range of activity that happened between the open and close. That's why it's hidden within the candle body. That means to me the market still hasn't confirmed the direction yet. Because some people are seeing very pessimistic or waiting for a crash to come, and that's why they're cashing out or moving their asset to somewhere else, and somebody are willing to get in seeing the price at this point. So for EGLD, again, look at what had happened during the 2020 and October 10th. The red key level isn't like 2.8, isn't an unreachable point if this really comes down for a further test. Alright, next is flare, AVAX. Similarly, on the journey seeking the selling climax. However, this looks way, I want to say way different from some of the others, but when looking at the left, it actually isn't. It's actually pretty similar to EGLD we just see, because this low point back in 2023, no, this is the difference, because it's still kind of young. Okay, it started, this chart at least started somewhere in 2023. It did not have something back in 2020. So the lowest point back then was at around 0.008, but the U-turn point was 1 cent 12. All right, so you see this U shape again now. And remember this cross, the red candle with a long wick from the bottom, a cross, and then the next is going back up. Currently, we don't see those yet. We see a wick. Let's see what's coming next week. If it is something like this, or even this, those are good signs. It's too early to tell. Volume obviously has declined. And if this is really some people buying and setting the bottom, that's a good sign, because it has already come down to challenge this bottom of the long-term playground zone at around 1 cent. So obviously there will be people buying, because there were quite some references over those points that, you know, those years back in March, April this year, as well as November, September 2023, those were like the bottom, if not, you know, those 3 weeks of further tests. And you know what's going to happen next when the selling climax finally appears, and what to follow, you know, the further tests. In the daily chart, it's trading on the stronger side. However, we've got only 3 reference points for this trend as of this moment, so it may further change. But the indicative dates currently is pointing towards mid-Jan. If it climbs up, that's the beginning of 2026. So those 2 time points, depending on whether it really has set the selling climax, if it comes back to the automatic rally, it may end up at around the orange key level of 0.013, or even the yellow key level of 0.014. Then in the daily, we would see it challenge the ceiling of the downtrend. Okay, if it's the orange key level, then it may get rejected. You know, that's somewhere around Christmas, and then it may get rejected or just travel along the ceiling of the air hockey table or this blue trend channel box. Next, Litecoin, another one in the early accumulation stage, yet to confirm the selling climax. Is pretty much confirmed that it's there, just that, you know, where it's going to stop. We see some buying obviously from these points below the orange key level of $79. The volume has been consistently getting lower and lower. It's understandable because the current point is actually very close to the October 10th level already. So I assume, you know, whoever wanted to sell might have sold already. So looking at the daily chart, you see the low volume over the past week. Yeah, that's a good sign. Finding or seeking support with long wick at the bottom and a white candle today. We just want to see white candles more with higher volume. Today's volume is still not convincing yet, so it may still come further down to challenge the red key level of $62. Look to the left. Back in April this year, not too far back in history, it came to that level. You know, that level was actually lower than the October 10th. And then further up, we have the summer period for 2024, as well as similar period back in 2023. All tested the same level of $62. So, you know, don't get surprised by this if it comes down to 62. We are waiting to confirm the trend change, which is likely going to take a while. So if I extend this trend box, just to make sure, by the time, let's assume is when it crosses the red line, it's getting very deep into late May. If, however, it comes to this level, it's pointing towards April Fool's Day. So, assuming we are really at the silent climax for Litecoin, and it's going to accumulate at a higher level around the orange key level of $79, which it did during 2025 second quarter, compared to what happened back in 2023-24, which accumulated at a lower level. 2025 this year, during the second quarter, it tested the red key level only for 2 weeks roughly, and then it quickly reclimbed to accumulate above the orange key level, between the yellow key level of 100 down to the orange key level of 79. Okay, so it can repeat what it did again, start accumulating at this point. That's a possibility. So when that happens, if it really bounces up to the automatic rally from this point, then in the daily chart we will see something like this. Alright, that's possible, just to let you know. And by then we don't need to wait till like May. Probably it's going to confirm the trend by end of March. Just that getting above the 100 key level is going to be a challenge unless the entire macro environment is improving. So next, Sweet coin. Sweet, similar, but the selling climax may already be there. If it does, this automatic rally over here is pretty disappointing. I'm still a bit hesitant to declare this is confirmed, because this pattern may still be something that we see during the preliminary support stage. Look at the volume. It hasn't gone to a really low level. It actually went a little bit higher. So you see this PS stage, there was quite a bit of sideways trading before it came down to the selling climax, where the volume continues to decline. Alright, so that's what I'm trying to, those signals are what I'm trying to see. We're not seeing that exactly yet. Maybe we are near with what's happening this week and last week, looking at the volume. And you know what's next for like after selling climax. It's disappeared over there, so let's borrow this, move it over. Okay, daily chart. It's definitely at the stronger side of the downward channel, so the chance of confirming a trend change is getting near. Either pops back up and confirm before Christmas in just 3-4 days time, or we have to wait till about the 9th of Jan. If it really comes down to test lower levels during the paper hands, diamond hands test, this white line around 36 cents 50 is the support level that we have to pay close attention to, because that's where August 2024 came, as well as October 2023. Alright, so that's we, and we have TIA next. So Celestia, similar sense, big picture, no difference, not going to repeat. It's trading at the weaker half of the channel, or the air hockey table, so expect more to come. The volume hasn't really died down, so it's not a surprise if it comes down to challenge the 29 cents white key level where the October 10th challenged. Okay, if we look to the left, there's not much reference, because that's what we got in this chart for Celestia. The box itself, let's make it, well, I will tidy these up afterwards. Tassels, let's use the auto. So same thing, selling climax pending confirmation. There seems to be quite some buying activities this week around the white solid line over here. That's around the 44 cents level is the bottom of the long-term playground zone. If we track all the way to 2018 and 19, 7 years from now, there were a couple of levels set as well. That's why we have this yellow, orange, and red dashed line. If this is not the lowest point of the selling climax for Teslas, the very first support is at around 40 cents, the second 36, the third is 31 or 32 cents. These paper hands, diamond hands tests is, don't get surprised if those tests get to those 3 levels. Alright, let's look at the daily chart and see how high the confirmation we get that we're getting close to a selling climax. The volume, initially it was declining, but yesterday it fluctuated a bit. So let's wait for a few more days to see whether this is going to flatten out or even climb back to challenge the red key level of 48 cents or even the orange key level of 51 cents. If that's the case, then the selling climax is confirmed. Otherwise, we have to wait for a little longer to see whether it's going to challenge this yellow dash line over there. Alright, and that's the early stage of accumulation. Now we're getting into the late stage or mid stage of accumulation. There are basically around 7 of them, so we'll be very quick. A, P, T, Apathy. Okay, no, Aptos. So Aptos here. Again, the downtrend we are seeing, the volume seems to be slightly coming down. Just that, these paper hands, diamond hands tests, it's going to continue. I'm glad to see it's finding support at this yellow dash line at around $1.60, especially this week. You see this long wick from the bottom is like a pin or a tiny cross with strong support from below. That's a slightly positive sign. If we look to the left, October 2022 is where we get these reference levels from. So this one that currently Aptos is finding support, and there's still a lower one at around 96 cents. Okay, let me adjust this. And current level is also where October 10th tested, so it's understandable it's finding support at this level. However, that's the lowest. You see the next line over here. This price traveling along the downtrend, finding support along the center line, trying to challenge this $1.6 resistance. The volume, we hope to see stronger volume. But with this candlestick, really trying to break through, we need that kind of bars, like the first week of November. Currently, we just don't have such going on. Again, this trend would need adjustment because it may be going through a slightly less steep path. If that's the case, then these states that this ceiling of the trend box is showing us with these support resistant lines. One points to the beginning of next year, the other points to 21st of January. So if it really gets rejected from the top dash line, coming back down to challenge the lower level, we have to wait till near the end of Jan, around the 21st, to get the first chance to confirm whether this downtrend is about to over. Next, AVAX. AVAX, this may well be a very deep spring after a sign of strength back in mid-September. It's getting real low, but October 10th got to even lower at around $8.80. So if we look to the left, we know where that was and why October 10th ended over there. And it's not going to be a surprise we get another spring similar to what happened back in 2023. Okay, that happened around October time earlier than this year, and it went to a new distribution cycle. Well, if history is going to repeat or rhymes with that time, that's not too bad of a time we are in. We're getting to the very end of the tunnel, at least when looking at AVAX. But be careful, the volume is still pretty consistent. Okay, it's not particularly low. If we look to the time where we had this, you see it was consistently low during that stage compared to the earlier period. Currently, it doesn't look to me that way. Lower than these couple of weeks, but not as low as when we were back in the first half of the year. So if we get to the daily chart, let's see whether that's because sometimes the volume is higher because some people are buying. And I don't see a long wick or some long wicks from the bottom. So it's still possible that people, or still quite a bit of paper hands are around. So this coming to challenge this white line at around $10.33 is still possible. This, we don't hope to see it happen. Let's say 330. Okay, we don't want to see this $8.80 being challenged. That's where the October 10th and the previous 2023 low was. However, that's a possibility. So if you get in now, you shouldn't be surprised by another like 28% adjustment, 25-26% adjustment from the current point. Okay, we want to see more of the volume bust like the 12th and the 14th for red days, not like yesterday and the day before. You see clearly the rejection, this long wick, right, from the blue key level of $12.25. So paper hands, yeah, still around. Chiles, a very exciting 4 weeks. Pushing it back up. The test seems to be taking a U-turn now. The accumulation is still continuing. It may not be over yet. We're still waiting for a sign of strength to happen. It hasn't shown up yet, but it's on the right track, assuming it's still continuing what it's been doing over the past couple of weeks. So when we get to the daily chart, today we've got a stronger volume pushing the price back up just to get rejected from the ceiling of this sideways trading. Okay, that's around the red key level of 3 cents 60. You see this over here, right? If we go back to the big picture, you see where it is. That's where the selling climax was. That's why we are seeing this rejection. But if more diamond hands are getting in, more volume is being pushed into Chiles. If we see something like what happened back in beginning of November, that's when we are finally going to be able to see the sign of strength. Alright, the sign of strength, best if we can come challenge the orange key level of 0.054, because the automatic rally came close to that level. We definitely want to see a sign of strength with tall white volume bar or bars. It sometimes takes a couple of weeks to show us this. But be careful, after sign of strength, it can still come back down for deeper tests before it climbs. So look at what happened over here. There was a sign of strength back in October 2024, but then it retraced for another month before it shot up for another distribution. Next, Polkadot. Similar, very deep test, and the volume isn't particularly low. There are still two more levels we can reference, about $1.50 and the other close to $1. October 10th got very close to that 0.096 level. if we look to the left, nothing except the one here, August 2020. That's around $1.40. Nothing lower than October 10th. All right, all-time low. Daily chart. It's time to adjust this trend. It seemingly has exited, but again, it travels along the ceiling. So let's see whether adjusting a little would get it back to the right measurement. Okay, assuming it, again, traveling at a less steep descending trend. So the next confirmation that we can get is potentially it clearly missed the December 20th one. It's tomorrow. Well, I won't say it has missed already. We still have 1 day. So magically, if it gets quite some buying volume, it can break in 1 day outside of this cross. All right. Looking at the volume today, if tomorrow behaves the same, it's probably going to hit this point but get rejected. But if it gets a high volume, that's when it can break out. Assuming that positive case isn't going to happen, the next case points to the 1st of Jan, okay? And even further, if it comes down to challenge the 0.96 level, that's going to be mid-Jan. So we're getting close. Within less than a month, we should be able to see a trend change confirmation. All right, and let's get on to flow. For flow, same thing, very deep test with increasing volume, so that's not a good sign. Currently, it's at a point lower than the October 10th. However, when I say it's not a good sign, when it went below the 0.188 red key level, this volume bar we are having this week, it may be a sign of people buying. So let's go to the daily chart. So here, this day, 2 days ago, I understand, yeah, it looks like the volume was high and the red candlestick was long. But then, as I explained in the previous, it may be the thing that it got to a low point. There were a lot of people buying as well. Because otherwise, look at what happened November 20th. That price spread would be even bigger. Okay, this price spread with the volume, there are probably quite some activities that happened between the open and close price, a lot of change of hands. We just want to see lower volumes like the end of November when we get to something like yesterday. Okay, after a fight between the bulls and the bears on a big day, these should come lower. Not the white one, the red one over here. The white definitely we want the volume to get even higher, just to recline back to the red key level of 18 cents 80. However, we know it still is traveling along the weaker side of the downtrend without any indication of breaking out. Alright, so it's still seeking the all-time low. If we look to the left, there's no reference. So that's why I always say especially some new projects. This one is already having a couple of years of reference. However, it still is showing a new profile to us that the lowest point of this is almost getting to, like some people say, zero. Not that it is at the moment, but it can. Some projects can definitely happen in that way. So it really has to depend on the particular chain, what kind of narrative they were built up on, and if that narrative is really suffering, the price of those projects are definitely going to suffer. So weekly of Casper. Going through the second test, that's confirmed. and they're, expect more paper hands diamond test to continue. The volume has been dying down, so that's a good sign, though hopefully it doesn't go lower than the selling climax, this yellow dash line over here at around 38.038. Okay, of course there are lower levels, and the bottom of the long-term playground zone is at around 0.0059. That's where, or when it first climbed up back in 2022 December. Okay, assume it's gonna stay up there. If we look at the daily chart, it's finally getting a rebound, but the volume isn't high enough again. So if it comes back down to where the selling climax was at around 0.037, it's not going to be a surprise. Okay, so more tests to continue. Last but not least, Polygon, another mid-late stage project in accumulation. Volume has been coming down, slightly positive sign. Price has been trading along the stronger half of the channel box, the downward air hockey table. So if I extend further, it's pointing towards December 29th, so near the end of the year, that it's got a chance to confirm whether it's going to break this downtrend. Just to confirm one thing, to make sure there is, sometimes when I initially draw these channels, I might have made them too steep, but looking at what's happening over the past couple of days, it's clearly traveling along the ceiling. So I think that's probably accurate for what we have drawn here. Okay, so let's wait for like about less than 2 weeks time for this to confirm. Because if we looked over, there's not much left we can take reference. This 0.95095, if you ask, we don't see anything to the left. If you have seen the sessions that I did this, you know where this is from. This is from the Matic chart. Okay, Polygon has rebranded its call sign. Initially it's called Matic, M-A-T-I-C. It's now POL. So some charts doesn't carry the past data. This 0.095 is what we get from the historical data of Polygon, and it can definitely come down to challenge that level if it wants to, because the volume isn't really getting to that kind of low level as of this moment. You see, compared to what happened back in just September, October, we're currently still at a relatively higher level, if not double. Okay, so thanks for joining me for this speedrun session. See you in other sessions. Stay safe, and Christmas is near, so I hope you're already preparing and enjoy your holidays. Ciao.